Hi everyone. David has asked me to share some of my thoughts with you on Matthew chapter 11. So when I was reading Matthew chapter 11, it was the first part of the chapter and the last part of the chapter that really made me pause and think a wee bit more. So right at the very beginning of the chapter, we have John. John is in prison and he's having doubts about who Jesus is. He sends his disciples to Jesus to ask, is he the one that they're waiting for? This is the John who baptized Jesus. At that time, John had no doubts as to who Jesus was. He knew exactly who he was, that he was the Messiah, that he was the one that he had been, and in fact, the entire Jewish faith had been waiting for. And yet, a few chapters further on, we have John sending disciples to Jesus and asking, is he actually the one that we're waiting for? And it made me think a wee bit about John and John's life. You know, we don't hear in the Bible about the childhood of Jesus or of John, but we know they were cousins. We know that they were close in age. Now, yes, they lived a distance apart, but I would think that they probably met up with each other at times, maybe when they went to the temple, when everyone was expected to go to the temple and families gathered then, maybe for other family activities. You know, did Elizabeth and Zachariah share with John the events around his birth? Did they share with John the events around Jesus' birth? What was the conversation in the family around these two boys? Did they know from the very beginning what their role here on earth was? And John was fulfilling that through becoming John the Baptist, and then Jesus stepped into his ministry. But then we have John wondering, is Jesus this person that he had always believed him to be? And why was it that John suddenly thought, I don't know if this is the person I've been waiting for and that Israel has been waiting for? And maybe it was his circumstances. So here's John in prison. Is that how he imagined his life would be? Did he imagine that when Jesus started out in his ministry that he would end up in prison and facing death? And perhaps that's why doubts were coming into his mind. He was listening to what everyone had to say. He heard what Jesus was doing and perhaps even saw what Jesus was doing before he went into prison. But then he also heard what other people were saying and the doubts were there. And this really made me think about my own life and the doubts that I have had. I have been exactly where John has been. I have been in that place of conviction where it's like, yes, I know exactly who Jesus is and I know that Jesus is my saviour. But I've also been in that place where I'm like, what is this all about? When my own circumstances haven't lived up to maybe where I thought I would be or what I would be doing, and life has been hard and difficult, and it's made me step back and think about my faith, and does it all make sense in the situation I find myself in? Then God reminded me that there's nothing wrong with doubts. In fact, doubts are what make us strong. Doubts are what make us grow. And we need doubts because they push us to question our faith deeper. They push us to go and explore the answers to the doubts that we're maybe having. To go and talk to other people who we trust and who we know will understand some of these things. But we have to take John's example. You know, John, when he had doubts, didn't go looking for answers in other places. He went straight to Jesus. And when we have doubts, that's what we need to do too. We need to pray about it. We need to go to the Bible. And if they persist, it's really important that we go and seek advice from other people. You know, even last week I was watching a programme. And after I'd watched the programme, thoughts popped into my mind. And the thoughts were, do you still really believe what you believe after watching that? Doesn't what you believe seem like nonsense? And I just stopped. I went, those are not my thoughts and I don't want them. And I prayed over them and I just said, not my thoughts, go. And I didn't allow myself to go down that road of thinking about the things that Satan wanted me to think about, because he wanted me to have doubts about my faith. So sometimes we definitely need to go and explore and look for the answers like John did, going to Jesus. And sometimes we need to realise that those thoughts are put into our head by someone else, by Satan, who doesn't want us to believe. and we need to just push them out and not allow ourselves to ponder on them. The last part that really challenged me was looking at the end of the chapter, where it talks about, where Jesus says, "Come to me, my yoke is light. You'll find rest and peace in me." And I really thought, well, what exactly is a yoke? It's something that I hadn't really explored before. We often hear biblical language and biblical illustrations that we've maybe heard for a very long time, but we don't think about them too much. And I suppose that was me with the yoke, where I had a basic understanding of what it was, but I thought I'd do a wee bit more digging. And when I looked into what a yoke actually was, I knew a yoke brought together two oxen. But what they would do was they put a younger oxen with an older oxen. And if that younger oxen followed behind the older oxen, did exactly what the older oxen did, because the older oxen understood the plough person's instructions and what was expected from him. And if he followed behind, then it was easy work and it wasn't a burden. But if that younger oxen strained against the older oxen, wanted to do his own thing, then that yoke would have gone against his shoulders, would have caused abrasions on his shoulders. The work would have been difficult, it would have been heavy, and he would have been exhausted by the end of it. And you know, people in Jesus' time would have understood exactly what Jesus was teaching. But I didn't until I thought about it a wee bit more. That when we become a Christian, we are yoked to Jesus. But we still have that nature within us, that drive within us that wants us to go our own direction, wants us to do our own thing. So even when we're yoked to him, we push against it. And it becomes heavy, and it becomes burdensome and even weary, because we're not walking in step with Jesus. And that really made me think that when I'm walking in step with Jesus, then the burden is light and it is easy, and I do find rest and peace in my soul. But when I struggle, when I go my own way, when I want to do my own thing, that's when things get difficult. So whenever I feel myself struggling, whenever I feel myself in a difficult situation, I need to examine where I am. Am I actually following Jesus? Or is my sinful nature taking me away from Jesus and wanting me to do my own thing? Because sometimes we don't even realise that's what we're doing. And it takes that burden and that understanding of the burden for us to turn around and say, "I'm sorry, I'm not doing what you want me to do. Let me walk in your steps." So those were the things that came to me while I was reading Matthew chapter 11. God bless everyone. Bye.